people say, well, I'm tired. I was like, well, it's sort of the minimalist theory. Get on the ground and do one push-up. If you get on the ground and do one push-up and say, I'm down here, I'm going to do at least 3, maybe 5. And all of a sudden, you started a routine. So those baby steps are so important. So I try to get people to kind of stay in their world, but make incremental steps.
Yeah, that's good.
And get moving it's the difference between finishing a 3 to 6 month cancer care being a 40 out of 100 versus a 83 out of 100. Wow. The daily non-exercise can leave you in a state of complete kind of breakdown of all the good things that you've worked for all your life.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Game Your Brain. This is an incredible podcast that we are going to record today with my friend, Dr. Chuck Meakin. Chuck is a 61-year-old rock star, okay? I'm going to talk about his incredible medical background, okay? He's a 31-year doctor. Right now, he is the chief medical officer at Care Oncology, with the mission of bringing forth the fourth leg for metabolic oncology. Okay, he is a prolific doctor in so many different ways, but he is also one of the most interesting men I've ever met. This man can hold his breath for 8 minutes. Okay, we'll talk about a lot of this. He's a bulletproof coach, a biohacking coach, biohacker, startup world entrepreneur, and a doctor. He has an incredible mindset to think about things from all angles, which is one of my favorite types of people. So, Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for your generosity. The 8 minutes was sort of a in ketosis, perfect moment for doing the Wim Hof, and I might have been micro breathing through my nose. I don't know, but
okay.
It's usually, in that zone, 5 days, 5 to 7 to 8. But yeah, thank you for that introduction. It's an honor to be here at Game Your Brain.
Well, the proof is in the pudding, right? When you're going to get food recommendations, you want your chef to be fat. When you get health recommendations, you want your doctor to be fit. And you are one of the most fit men I've ever seen, especially at age 61. So this is going to be an amazing conversation. I do have to say one more thing.
Sure.
You did how many push-ups after your Wim Hof breath? So you do your Wim Hof breathing. How many push-ups can you do with your breath held?
So I always strive to do 50 to 60. And then I do 10 to 20 mountain climbers, with your knees. And then I take a big breath. And then I try to go through all the 6 major muscle groups with one breath and then do an isometric. So you're making those individual muscles beg for a little more oxygen, which really gives mitochondrial biogenesis, and it kind of goes around the body. And the beauty of it all is not the body work, it's what it does for the brain.
Well, and for our listeners, okay, by the way, you are literally the most interesting man in America right now to me. That is 60 something push-ups with your breath held. If you're listening, you can pause this right now and try it. And I think my record is, 35, and I almost passed out. I think I got 2 minutes and 45 seconds, and I'm a novice at Wim Hof. So I am excited to be going more into this world with you.
It gets easier and easier. And I think I've done 70 at one point. The more you're in ketosis, as you know, when you're in ketosis, you need 1/3 less oxygen to create the same ATP. So you immediately have a significant advantage. And the more you do it, the more you activate those, fat burning pathways, the more you get comfortable staying in a relaxed state of low oxygen. And that enhances the parasympathetic system, and that makes us all a little more relaxed.
So answer this simple. Here's a simpleton question from I definitely an audience member that wants this. Why is holding your breath a good thing? Explain that in the body real quick, because I think a lot of people, when they grew up, including myself, it was like, hey, don't hold your breath too long. It'll kill your brain cells, right? That's kind of what people say. Same with watching TV, apparently. So why is holding your breath a good thing?
Well, I would also add to that, cold exposure or cold immersion. Those are the 2 tools that, Wim Hof, who's kind of got this movement going, and then other people have joined in, use to enhance parasympathetic balance. We're all wired, and it's not either or, it's not black or white, but we're wired to be in more sympathetic mode, which is run from the lion, versus parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, relax, and have a good T cell mediated immunity. I'll say that as a cancer doctor. And when you get in a state of human brainstem thinking where you think you're going to die, but you can relax through that. And the two big ways we do that is cold exposure and breath hold, because those are sort of primal threats. And as you hold your breath in a relaxed way, not in a grit the mouth way, and passively kind of acknowledge it, and kind of is Scott Carney said well in his book, The Wedge, throw that wedge in there and say, I got this. I got this. And, it's a good time to do some prayer. It's a good time to review the day's agenda. It's a good time to, go off in your mind. And the more you do that, the more you get comfortable at not reacting in a sympathetic way when things come about in our normal life. So yes, staying in parasympathetic will keep us healthier longer. There's a lot of cancer trials that support that, and other general metabolic trials.
Absolutely. And that fight or flight stress can be very, in small amounts, can be very good for you overall, for your mitochondria, your T cells, like you said. And that's brilliant the way you said it. I actually never really made that connection between ice baths and holding your breath. I guess the third way would be marrying the wrong woman, but that's a much more long-term expensive way to do it. I would argue that let's hold our breath and go into ice baths more instead of that one.
Yeah. And you'll freak out less. I mean, it makes it life easier because you just don't overreact.
Yep. That's well said. Well said. Okay. Well, we got to get into this because I know today we have a lot of incredible topics to go through, but what you're doing in the cancer space, and by the way, Happy is, our parent company has done so much work with cancer patients and is really at the bleeding edge of this. And I love that you're wearing it, by the way, and enjoying yourself as I am on Focus. But I want to talk about what you're doing with Care Oncology. So explain why Care Oncology exists and why you fell in love with the mission.
Yeah. So Scott, I'll back up a little bit to answer that thoroughly. I worked, I finished my residency at Stanford in 1989. So up till 2019, 30 years in busy big cancer center care and work. And at the end, I think we had 35 to 36 doctors in our group. And after a while, I started feeling like I hate to say it this way, but in the theater of absurd, in that, some of the big situations where most people, most of the time our care didn't work. It failed way more than 50% of the time. And the care was very expensive to the point of bankruptcy. And it's the number one cause of medical bankruptcy. It's always inconvenient. The side effects are fairly severe. It's pretty rough for the patient. And then there's chronic side effects that disrupt all the things we want to prevent, as well as it raises the risk of a second cancer if you get through the first one. And then finally, fifth, we send them off and say, good luck, come back every 3 months. We'll do expensive tests, and many times it does come back. So when I stumbled upon Care Oncology, it aligned with all the things that I'd kind of thought about and worked on through my 30 years of trying to get in better alignment with our metabolism, which I think is the root of most chronic medical conditions. And it had a platform that made it really easy, cheap, accessible to the masses. And so briefly, Care Oncology started in 2013. Robin Bannister, PhD pharmacist, wife, like most things start from a story of pain and
a need.
A need,
a frustration. That's exactly right.
The Xavier Ash University, and his wife Ginny had stage 4 breast cancer. She'd gone through the common treatments, was given the option for hospice in her early 50s. That's unacceptable. And Robin had already repurposed some drugs. So as a PhD pharmacist, was an expert at this, and said, honey, I think I can work up some ideas. Drugs that have had some use in one area also have some anti-cancer benefit, but are not recognized in that area. And she said, yes, put something together, but only if it's for a purpose bigger than me. And therefore they started Care Oncology and ultimately started a trial. Well, the short story, she lived for 4.5 years to late 2017. was not on any other standard of care. And we always advocate appropriate standard of care if it's available. But they did a trial to really get some traction. And they looked at what's the most difficult cancer that nobody's made any inroads on. And of course, glioblastoma rises to the top of the list. And they treated 95 patients who got standard of care, and they gave them these 4 repurposed drugs that they had assimilated as sort of the best pick for best synergy, least side effects, most non-overlapping mechanisms of action, and worked metabolically.
Wow.
And in those 95 patients, they all got the standard of care, which is usually surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and then more chemotherapy. And the median survival in this, well, you may remember John McCain and Ted Kennedy. John lived 13 months, Ted lived 14 months. They probably never agreed on much politically, but I know they agreed on one thing, that glioblastoma was a real bummer.
It's
and
terrible. Right.
Despite the best care, they had the average best survival in the literature. The normal survival is like 9 months.
That's right. 9.
Yeah. And so, in our trial, the median survival was a real outline signal at 28 months. And 58%, almost 60% of people got to 2 years. And that's been published in a peer-reviewed journal last year. And we've since upgraded with an abstract presentation at Metabolic Health Conference in February of this year. And now I have 3 patients that have never recurred, and they're all out 2.5 to 3 years from a glioblastoma. And I never saw that. And I never saw people get more than a year with glioblastoma without recurrence.
And you said what? You said 68?
2018.
68%, did you say, got to 2 years? Is that what you said?
No, 58%.
58%. I'm sorry. Well, still 58%
yes,
of these
in
patients
the trial, in the metrics.
Almost doubled.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
So,
wow.
Yeah, and then now I have 3 patients. Now you can't make a big judgment from 3, but in 31 years of busy cancer work, I never saw anybody get beyond a year. And these 3 have never recurred. They function as a teacher, a yoga instructor, and a podcaster, and are normal. So we treat all 4 things. We have a simple, online platform where patients find us through the internet or recommendations or our publications or our podcasters, and they look at our internet information, all white papers and science-based information. And then they do an intake with one of our managers. We have 5 managers. They line up with one of our 5 oncologists. We cover all the US and part of Canada, in addition to our European side. And I did 3 consults today. We do an hour consult, see if they're a candidate for it. And then within 2 to 3 days, they get the 90-day supply of these 4 drugs through our partnership pharmacy to their doorstep. So,
wow.
I think I checked all the boxes. These things are easy, inexpensive, less than $200 a month for the physician and oncology nurse service, and the overall platform and the pharmaceutical cost. And people don't have to leave their living room. The drugs get to their doorstep in 3 days after they see us. And these medications all help other chronic medical conditions, and now have been well established to reduce risk of other malignancies. So,
wow,
I'm very proud to be a part of this growing company.
This is incredible. I mean, so this is why I like you so much. You have the entrepreneurial background, you have the biohacker background, and you have the medical chops. So I think you're kind of in the perfect spot here to think about the problem in a different way, right? I've said forever, I'm like, how many of these big organizations are making billions of dollars to try to help cancer, and they're attacking the problem from the same direction? Whereas what if the answer lies in just breaking it down to its fundamentals and rethinking some of how cancer is created and how we can help people? You just walked me through how you think about the best way for somebody to heal from an illness or cancer.
I was going to jump in here because you're really getting to an issue that is, I think, very vital to discuss here. In 1971, the U.S. initiated its war on cancer, Richard Nixon. Ironically, Ted Kennedy was at that kind of photo shot and ultimately died, 40 years later with a tumor that hasn't been improved upon.
Yeah.
And they thought they could eliminate cancer in 10 years. The individual rate of getting cancer, we call prevalence, was about 20%. Now it's 40% or more. The mortality rate was 16 to 17%. Now it's 22%. It's starting to pass heart disease as the most common cause of death. And what we spent on it has just gone astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
And so at that time, the predominant thought on how to fix cancer kind of went back to the somatic mutation theory. And that is the theory that, cancer comes from this mistake in the DNA replication that leads to some rogue clone of cells that start, like a bad case of mosquitoes or roaches, kind of grows in the body and starts impinging on the normal function. And that was led to therapies that are all targeting these different mutations is sort of the prime area of investigation. Now, if you biopsy a woman with metastatic breast cancer and you biopsy a metastatic site, they may have more than 200 mutations. And these mutations are not what we call driver mutations or ones that lead to the progeny. They're byproducts of just unregulated transcription and therefore byproduct mutations.
Got it. Okay.
The opposing theory that was initiated by Otto Warburg in the 30s is what we call the metabolic theory of cancer. And it's that the loss of energetics in the cell or mitochondrial function start to fail, and they start not overseeing the sanctity or the soundness of transcription of new DNA and making of proteins, which then back regulates, the oversight in the DNA. And that is the failure. And when you lose that, unless you correct that, you will not, ultimately fully correct, the problem. So that has been resurrected by one of my co-founders, Travis Christofferson, who wrote the book Tripping Over the Truth. And I think now we see just this pluralistic approach to many diseases, looking at metabolic solutions with chronic metabolic disease, with diabetes, neurovascular disease, with dementia and whatnot, and with Dale Bredesen and his work. And we also see it in cancer with Dominic DiCastino, Thomas Segfried, Lou Cantley, and all these researchers that are starting to stop back and go back to it's the metabolics that we forgot to address. And care oncology solely addresses that factor.
Wow. So that's why you guys want to be almost like the fourth leg for metabolic oncology. And I think tripping over the truth, is that the book? I love that.
That's the name of it. Yeah.
I love that. That the guy in the 30s had it right.
Yeah. And I will also say, there is, I'm very creative in my approach and want to be integrative in this discussion. It's not either or. There's a term I like is the tyranny of dichotomy. So many people, yes or no, black or white, either or, and they always have to be in one box. It's a little bit of both, but I'd say it's probably more metabolic issues. And there are cancers like, gastrointestinal stromal tumor where there's one main driver, and Gleevec fix that, and many people get long responses, but most are irrelevant mutations and don't fix the problem.
But don't you think that this is just interesting as you're educating me along with all the listeners? I have to think that the metabolic way of looking at this can potentially help the patient in so many other ways, in addition to just dealing with that very specific health issue, a tumor, a glioblastoma tumor, right? I think if you approach this is, I think, why functional medicine is growing so fast. People are thinking about your body holistically from all sides. And, one pill can trigger 5 other problems. And, why not look at things holistically, metabolically? All of your body's processes start in a specific way and they communicate in a specific way. And what it feels like you're thinking about this is almost first principles. You're saying, okay,
Bingo.
let's not knock down a bunch of other dominoes down the line by trying to prop up the first domino in a very specific way. You're in a way trying to save a lot of things at once rather than breaking the first one just to save a brain or a body or something like that.
Exactly. And the most common statement I hear is, hey, doc, I am so much more healthy now. I'm so much, stronger, more vital, clear-headed than I was a year or two before my diagnosis. Now that I have deployed, some metabolic thinking, which incorporates, our 4 repurposed generic drugs that work metabolically and have some long-term benefits, as well as other lifestyle changes. And so those are front and center with our care with our doctors. We have a center of excellence we call Metrics, because that was the name of our first trial, that where we house all this metabolic data. We have full-time scientists dedicated to putting stuff there. We
Wow.
have monthly discussions with our teammates in England and our nursing team about nuances to it. There's, with all the evolution of new immunodrugs, we have to be thoughtful about, is there an issue with this? Do we need to modify this? And that's why we think, we can do this in our virtual panel, working with patients. And, most of the doctors who start, oncologists who have us work with their patients are happy to have another teammate that, that jump in,
Right.
we're doing a little. There was a video made on one of our patients over in England. We're making sort of a smaller video because it's like, the first one was 30 minutes long. And she is now 30 months into her 2 drugs for breast cancer. And this is one of the British patients that's been out a while. And that usually for a person with her disease, the average or median time where she would have a response to these 2 drugs, it's Ibrance and something called Femora or letrozole, 2 drugs,
Okay.
is 10 months. And it's even worse if you have liver involvement. And this one did have that. Yet she is 30 months into it because who knows why, but she was also on our protocol for the last 25 months. So it's, some doctors are starting to say, yes, I've seen that in action and I want you to get on it. It's very low cost. It's convenient. We don't get extra blood tests because they're getting them anyway.
Yeah.
And some people are starting to wake up to it. Others are, still waiting for randomized data, which, is one of the challenges.
Right. Yeah. A 10,000 person Stanford study that some guy gives you $1 billion to do. You got to prove it out with as many people as you can with the resources you have at hand. Trust me, we've been in this world. We did a shoestring budget blinded sham study for our Happy too. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. It's not easy to do, but it's important to show as much base data as you can and then let the customers just try it, right? If it's not going to hurt, I would say just try. That's our main thinking for a lot of people. Okay.
And I've always been in that camp in my field of care. And, I won't go into too much detail, but Vinny Prasad is a well-recognized oncologist, over 200 publications, just moved his work to UCSF. He just did a book, I think it's called Cell. And he talks about, it's great because he talks about the hallmarks of a good cancer center and how there's no bad people out there. It's just the design of how we generate new drugs has failed us, because you can get a slight statistical improvement of median survival, median disease-free progression, and get a $1 billion drug approved, which gives you an open checkbook. Yet it doesn't solve the problems a patient are interested in. Does it make me live better, and does it cure my cancer and let me live longer? So,
right. That's so good.
So we are below that framework, and I like the fact that somebody as well recognized as Dr. Prasad has spoke about that.
Well, this is the perfect transition to the big 6, because I would love to hear. I want to hear your thinking on this of the big 6 for cancer patients, and I think it actually is for everybody dealing with health issues or aging, right? Like, one of my favorite comments is, I think this was Peter Diamandis is aging is a disease, right? We have to think differently about aging, because it's not just, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. A lot of, did you know that the two fastest dying professions are doctors and insurance actuaries after they retire? Did you know that?
Oh my goodness.
It's because when you retire and or like an insurance actuary spends their whole life thinking, okay, I'm calculating when someone's going to die. And in their mind, they're setting the stage for when they're probably going to die. And they're just expecting it. And doctors the same way. You spend your whole life around people that you're trying to help stave off death, right? And have a better, longer, healthier life. Then they turn it off and they retire, and it's average 10 years or less for doctors. It's crazy. Yeah. And so what you got to think of is a different mindset where, how do you deal with health well? How do you think? So I want to get to this big six, because I think it's a lot to do with health. Go ahead.
That's a great introduction. And, I was always about bringing simple, easy things that don't cost much, that are accessible, that, as you said earlier, more than likely, never say never, never say always, more than likely wouldn't hurt, to the availability of our cancer patients. So I just, maybe 10 years ago, came up with the acronym Big Six. And I thought that would be about an easy thing for people to remember. But, the worst thing that we do, our white coat, wearing doctors, and myself included in that, is we unfortunately scare people. And if you're in a state, as we talked about earlier, of fight or flight, you pretty much sabotage your ability to do long-term sort of strategies on healing yourself, T-cell mediated immunity. You're just primarily getting out of immediate danger. So the first B is for breath. Stay in your nose. As we know, nostril breathing initiates a series of chemical reaction, nitric oxide, smooth muscle relaxation. It enables us to stay in a parasympathetic mode, and allows us to do everything we want to do from a health standpoint. As well as, there are many times cancer patients can get triggered. And so that gives them a simple tool to zip the mouth, go back to the nose, nostril breathing. It's the fundamentals of, yoga, meditation, mindfulness. And so that's an easy one.
Quick plug for James Nestor's newest book.
Oh, Breath.
We just had him speak. It's an incredible book. He just spoke at Genius Network this last weekend, a few days ago. And it was an hour of the most fascinating information. You breathe 30 pounds of oxygen a day. And if you breathe through your nose, not only are you catching a lot of microbes and bacteria and issues, but you're getting about 60% more oxygen usage from the breath that comes through your nose, rather than, because you can overbreathe through your mouth.
Bingo.
Right? And people don't realize this. They just think, I have to breathe as much as possible. No, you need to breathe the right way, and actually breathing less per minute through your nose is better for your oxygen to be able to be used in the body. Right?
Bingo.
Amazing.
So as you do this 100-day challenge, try to do a workout and stay in your nose as long as you can. And the beauty there is you don't overbreathe, as you said. You tend to move more like, on average, like, like 6 to 12, liters of oxygen versus 10 to 16. And you keep some CO2 where your oxygen, your hemoglobin can release the oxygen better. And the more you stay in your nose, the more you stay well oxygenated at your peripheral tissues. So it's powerful.
They've got us putting tape, by the way. They've got us putting tape over our mouths to go to sleep, because it's one of the cheapest, easiest ways to help with sleep apnea and snoring and other issues. Now, if you have a clinical issue with sleep apnea, do not just tape your mouth. Go see a doctor, please, if you're listening to this.
Yeah.
But simple snoring and issues with sleep, tape over your mouth is one of the easiest ways to force breathing through the nose, which gives you deeper sleep, better metabolic processes, all these things. It's just incredible what just putting some tape over your mouth can do. So that's the best first of the six. Okay, I love it.
Oh, yeah. And kudos to, James Nestor for putting silicone plugs in his nose for 2 weeks. I tried it for like a few hours, and I was like, man, I got to get these out of here. But great book,
He said it was extremely painful.
Oh, yeah. And all his health parameters went down the tubes. Second thing, and this I stands for two things that start with an I: ingest real food ingest serious hydration every morning. Real food, and I try to make it simple for our patients, then I can go into detail, but real food is the food that your grandparents might recognize. Real food is not factory food. Factory food with labels, usually is got some processing, which 50% of it is generally some version of soy, wheat, and corn, carbohydrate, and other chemicals. So we try to people eating real food, and then we try to encourage low carbohydrate strategies that, because we know, from PET scans and other studies, the biggest food choice of cancer cells is refined sugar, mainly
Yep.
fructose. And then and once they think about that, it's easy for them to categorize things like, this has a bunch of labels, it's not real food.
Yeah.
Then with the other ingest is hydration is so underutilized. One of the simplest, smartest things I ever did was start every day with 16 to 24 ounces of water, and I've now added electrolytes, and that's the biggest sort of oversight people do, are trying to get into low carb or fasting or ketogenic diet. They don't replace electrolytes.
Okay.
And Rob Wolf talks about that as his big blunder. But do some serious hydration in the morning, and dump it down like a pirate in a bar. And
Okay.
you want to have a good flush of getting out that metabolic sludge from 10 hours of not drinking, and do that every morning. And that, you want to have a big clear urine. The urine is a little barometer of, how your fluid intake is. Most of us walk around in a state of dehydration. Do that every morning. And then,
do you have
that
any
is,
electrolyte ideas for folks?
I'm cheap as easy. I use a sea salt. I use a sea salt with from Redmond's. I like they're out of Utah. It's a family company, a family
Wow.
mine. They just opened up. I don't have any financial relationship with any of these people. Any good Himalayan sea salt. Sea salt, once again, has some magnesium and some micronutrients, some minerals that our body needs for maximum function. And
Wow.
so those are simple ones. I actually put a little aloe vera in mine because my clean coffee gives me a little bit of heartburn, and the aloe vera juice, pure juice, kind of heals everything on the inside.
Wow.
So
Okay.
those are the two I's in ingest. The next is G, and that's for get moving. A body in motion stays in motion. Exercise during cancer care is like a little window of kind of ketosis. You're not eating. Exercise initiates so many signaling events that foster youthfulness, anti-aging, and what it does for the body is only secondary to what it does for the brain. You know that in this, it's the name of this podcast. All the good things it does for the brain-derived neuropeptide, help heal the brain, help the hippocampus retain long-term memories. It is so underutilized. If it was a drug, it would be a blockbuster. So people say, well, I'm tired. I was like, well, it's sort of the minimalist theory. Get on the ground and do one push-up. If you get on the ground and do one push-up and say, I'm down here, I'm going to do at least 3, maybe 5. And all of a sudden, you started a routine. So those baby steps are so important. So I try to get people to kind of stay in their world, but make incremental steps.
Yeah, that's good.
And get moving it's the difference between finishing a 3 to 6 month cancer care being a 40 out of 100 versus a 83 out of 100.
Wow.
The daily non-exercise can leave you in a state of complete kind of breakdown of all the good things that you've worked for all your life. So any sort of practice of staying moving is so important for our cancer patients. Okay, we've done B for breath. We've done 2 I's for ingestion of real food, a lot of hydration.
And get moving.
Get
That's
moving. Right. The S, Matthew Walker, we're proud of this. Sleep is king.
There you go.
There's a reason we, as all our human, evolution, we've dedicated 1/3 of our time to sleep. We've sacrificed not predation, we're being at risk when we sleep. We're not looking for food. We're not looking for reproductive mates. We gave 1/3 to sleep because it is so vitally important. It's equally important for the brain as it is for the body. And we want our cancer patients to sleep during their diurnal rhythm. So we get them back to some synchrony with their diurnal rhythm. We sometimes use sleep hacks as they come up and need to. We try to do
Putting
anything
this
we
under a
can.
pillow is pretty incredible, by the way.
Oh yeah.
This
Oh
is one of
yeah.
my biggest hacks so far. We've got hundreds of people putting this under their pillow for deeper REM, and oh, it's fantastic. So
Mm-hmm.
very
And
cool.
I think in our, for years I wanted to use fitness tools and wearables for monitoring our patients, and that's within Care Oncology is one of our future goals, of course. But every morning I get a message like, "Am I ready or not ready?"
Yep.
Generally, I can feel whether I'm ready, but sleep is so important, and there's a lot of things you can do before you write a prescription for something that has, some side effects that you don't want.
Yeah.
Magnesium, sleep induction blanket, dark adaptation glasses, blue blockers, all those things. So sleep is king. The next I in the 6 is for intention. And this is so underutilized. It stays in the toolbox most of the time in allopathic medicine. I encourage people to set an intention. I give them an easy recipe for doing it. I suggest they make a movie of them doing things they want in the future, looking strong, looking vital, which is sort of a proxy for them being healed. I
Mm.
ask them to make it specific. And as they go to sleep, as they wake up in the morning, when they have a window into that subconscious, I want them to take that movie, reel it in their head, pull it into their heart and gut space, and really bake and marinate into it to the point where it becomes anchored, becomes sort of, it vaccinates them against negativity. And it's almost like they're falling forward into this future self. And that's how they set that intention. We now
Wow.
know through, my goodness, all the incredible works on on quantum physics, that those thoughts are just not chemical reactions; those are
Right.
vibrations.
That's right.
Those vibration rates, proteins fold, and transcription enzymes work better, and you will sort of self-correct some of this.
Yeah.
And
You're
so,
speaking my language. I've been reading the nuclear physics and quantum physics for fun for the last 2 years doing
yeah,
happy. So this is now you're speaking my world. I mean, we are energy. That's what we are.
yeah,
I mean, if people don't realize you get inside of a cell, you get inside the DNA, you get inside the atoms. We are protons, neutrons, and electrons with a whole lot of distance between them. We're
mm-hmm,
just energy and vibrations at the heart of who we are, right? And having this intention, it means the world. I think this is probably the coolest one I've heard so far, because everybody talks about sleep, eat, exercise,
yeah,
but this intention really means the world. Because if someone doesn't have a future vision and a passion or a why for living or a goal, like for me, I picture my grandkids' wedding, right?
bingo.
That's what I
I like
see when
that.
I think of health. My grandkid's wedding. I want to be, but I don't just want to be there in a wheelchair. I want Chuck, I want to be there like partying. I want to be like on the
Well,
dance floor, leading the dance and having a blast, right? So that's the intention that
yeah.
comes out.
Well, and as Peter Attia so well says, he does his squats not because he wants to have a number he can talk about his buddies. He wants to be able to do a goblet lift with his great grandson down the road and not have to strain. And
That's right.
that's, we got to link those exercises to that future you. And you said something there that I will add at this point. You got to figure out the why. Most of my patients will say, "All right, well, why do you want to be cured?" And they're like, "Well, I want to not have cancer. I want to live longer. I want to." Oh, well, why? You start peeling off that engine or that onion, excuse me. And finally you get to the point, well, they refigure out, they remember their mission.
Mm,
And I said, that's why I did this exercise, because you need to reconnect with that, because there are going to be some hard days.
yep.
And unless you know the why, you're not going to get through it. And so thank you for bringing that up,
Yeah.
Scott. And so the intention setting, I feel like I give people a little bit of a recipe in it. Sounds like you've been reading Bruce Lipton, Biology Belief, who pivoted from a cell biologist to a guy who talks about the woo-woo quantum physics, but these things are measurable now, and your company is based on it. The
Yep.
final thing is X, and I chose X because it stands for extreme love. And people like, well, what do you mean? Extreme love, and I phrase it this way. The most powerful force we have is love. People do amazing things on the battlefield, not so much out of duty, but because they love their fellow soldiers. They on the play field because they're partners with their teammates, on the boardroom because they're in it together, like a startup like you've been through. So I encourage people, I say, if you buy a yellow car, you start seeing yellow cars everywhere. If you look for kindness and generosity and love in our fellow human beings, you start to notice it. And my goodness, when you notice it, if you reflect it and echo it and really raise it up, you can really feel it. I said, when you feel it, you need to then metaphorically grab it and link it to your own healing for a purpose bigger than yourself.
Yep.
For a purpose bigger than yourself. In that way, you tap into what you just spoke about, this quantum physics, this energy. That's when you tap into the most powerful resource we have. And so that gives people a little bit of a roadmap on how to tap into these tools that are so often left in the toolbox, the big six.
Wow, that is beautiful. And yes, it's geared towards cancer patients, but you just gave everyone, cancer or not, any health issue or sickness issue, whatever it is, you gave them a roadmap to how to live your life. I think that's beautiful, my friend. Thank you for sharing that.
You.
Let me recap. I'll recap just to make sure I have it. So breath, ingesting real food, real electrolyte, water or other things. Hydration. Yes, hydration. Get moving. The exercise piece is so crucial. Sleep is king, right? Following your rhythm, get tracking, do whatever it takes with the light or the blue blockers. The I is for intention, set the intention, right? Having that future vision of yourself, make a movie of who you want to be and what you see. And then the last one, extreme love. I love that. Thinking about for a purpose bigger than yourself. I love that one. I think now I like that one more than the other one, but
good.
I love this. So we've been talking about happy so much, and how crazy it is and how much we've grown so quickly. The IPO just a couple weeks ago. Now I'm doing this 100-day journey, right? And, my 100-day journey is going to be a transformation of my mind and my body and my environment, because I want to be, like you said, a purpose higher than myself. I want to share all these ideas that I'm learning and realizing now. I mean, people are coming to me now for the first time in my life saying, hey, I've heard about happy. Could you help with this? I know this piece of health. I'd love to share it with you and educate you. And so for me, I am actually more motivated to help educate the world on all these incredible pieces of technology and medicine and all the ways that people are having wellness and health in their lives. That's kind of my bigger purpose for this now. We originally thought happy was just going to be like the fun kind of feel a nice buzz, help you sleep a little bit, feel a nice entertaining, chill out, watch a movie and play the happy. This thing is now one of the best mental wellness products I've ever seen, right? And I'm not just trying to be biased because I am part of it. I really do believe that, but I'm only doing this now for a purpose larger than myself, right? We just had a military vet organization, the largest one in the US, come to us this morning and say, we have a bunch of people using happy. I didn't even know. And they love it. And they're turning to it instead of drugs. They're turning to it like instead of alcohol or smoking or pills or things. It's helping them with their mental wellness and not triggering a trauma or another issue. I just got the why. I just fell in love with my mission of what we're doing so much more than ever before. And I've never felt better energy than today in this entire business. So I think you nailed it, my friend, with the big.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if you remember when we first met. The Dave Asprey bulletproof. I read about happy, and I was like, man, I want to ask about EMF. EMF is a concern of mine, and we had a good talk. And I was like, Scott, and then Brian was on. This is like the transition when Apple figured out digital music, that you don't need a record player, a CD, or a disc. You can give the same product
feelings
that is just digitally delivered. And this,
that's right.
So it's going to be what I call, revolutionary. It's a major pivot. And especially as you sort of link other effective drugs with this and, supplements and things that can have an impact without the negative impact. It's very exciting.
Well, thank you. And this is a great way. I think we only have a few more minutes left, but I love that we're ending on this extreme sort of love idea and all these tips you just gave our listeners. And, for me, the 100-day journey, I'm going to be using all of these. You just gave me my tips, my friend. So this is perfect. I'm going to be running I've got the big 6 memorized now. So that's how I'm going to be running my days. And I want to end with this extreme love idea a little bit more. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to have that last day of your life and at your eulogy? What do you want to have be remembered about you?
Well, kind of what you talked about earlier. I believe that you should never retire. Once you give up your why or keep marching toward it, you kind of slowly die inside. And I think that's a Buddhist kind of understanding. And it's probably is part of all religions and all sort of thoughts. And because I see that, I just spent a year with 56 20-year-olds, and it was wonderful. There's a lot of good energy, and we kind of exchanged, thoughts and ideas. They helped me with things, and I inspired them. And so, a big part of it is I say, you want to look long term and look how you're going to make your impact. And as you said earlier, there's people that can see from one sort of industry or one field and look at opportunities in other fields to kind of merge those and bring things that, like the happy and like Care Oncology's simple 4 drugs that have amazing effects in prevention of chronic medical disease. I kind of see those connections and say, hey, this isn't impossible. Let's start somewhere. Everybody at Care Oncology is either a veteran oncologist or a cancer survivor. They're in it because, they want to make a difference, not so much to make a buck. And so I think my big purpose here is to better bring to the masses the opportunity to make this road on earth a little easier through understanding metabolic health. And I always apologize to people. I say I may have been in a rush, but it's because there's so much to learn.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, and I'm not hanging out somewhere. But I think as people get to know me, I hope to be very authentic and sort of impactful in their lives. And it's so exciting because things change every week, every month. I heard about your company. I heard about a bunch of others more recently. And our big next step, we think, will be sort of changing with Care Oncology. I can't talk about the specifics of our partner, but we are linking with a team that have developed a blood marker that looks at a bunch of RNA byproducts. As the body starts to go astray, it will make these in response to that and get a very, very early detection message and signal that something's going wrong, not just for cancer, but for all metabolic diseases. And then our plan is to use our 4 drugs, which are prescription. They're not prescription in every country, but in this country they are, for 2 weeks, coupled with maybe 10 weeks of 5 supplements that also work in mimicking ways to our 4 drugs, and then repeat that 12-week cycle 4 times a year, and then repeat that blood test. So we can, take the high-risk populations that are out there and the worried well, and virtually, 4 to 5 out of 10 people get cancer in their lifetime, kind of head off that possibility of getting cancer or other chronic metabolic disease. So the why is not just about cancer, but it's also to, really impact a lot of disease.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be a part of Care Oncology. CareOncology.com is part of bringing that out. And you should hear more about that in the next 2 to 3 months.
I've always thought, and I know this sounds crazy, but one of my unique abilities is vision, and I'm a visionary, right? I always thought that whoever figures out cancer is going to simultaneously figure out 10 other things. I always
you're right on.
I had this hunch for the last 15 years that there's going to be learning and innovating and tweaking and figuring, and then whoever hits it is going to be hitting it from so many different angles and so many different pathways in the body and so many different thought processes for how health works that they're going to knock out 10 at once, right? It's almost like the car knocked out a bunch of industries, not just horse and buggy. The light bulb the light bulb didn't just end like darkness. It changed refrigeration. It created refrigeration and all these other things. It was a cascade effect. And so I love how you think, because I do believe that you're going down a path that's going to help an exponential amount of people. I think this we shouldn't put cancer in the title anywhere of this podcast, because what we're talking about is general health. We're talking about longevity and health span, not just, when you get sick, what do you do? So I really do appreciate your time.
Sure.
You've been amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you to, spreading the word, like you say, a purpose bigger than yourself. And you got one for kids, which is golly, so powerful, so important when kids can teach their parents. Thank you to the researchers that were strong enough to go against the grain a little bit. Thomas Segfried, Dominic DiGustino, Luke Cantley. There's so many out there that have said, something's not right here. And thank you to my teammates, the earlier ones who said, nobody wants to talk to us, but we feel this is right, and had the courage to sort of will through the early startup. And right now we haven't taken any funding. We're successfully profitable here in the US, and we're growing. And once again, we have this exciting partnership we're going to bring out in the next 3 to 6 months.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we're excited to hear more, and maybe we'll do a follow-on next year in the next 9 months and let people know where we're at and where you're at. So I'm excited to have it.
Great. Thank you, Scott, for your time today. I appreciate being on the podcast.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for listening. Tune in next time to another episode of Game Your Brain podcast.